This is a first-time home buyer who also happens to be an architect. So that's a person that's really going to be looking at the structure of their home. Now, this was a purchase that she did with her partner, and understanding their money styles and how they work together was a big part of this story. And her biggest tip is making sure that you know your numbers, which was very important to her because she was one of those people that thought that student debt was holding her back from buying a home. But she learned about debt to income ratio and the differences between your gross debt and your monthly debt. So you'll get those tips in here because what the bank looks at, it's not nearly as bad as you think it is. And of course, you'll learn the value of a really great unicorn and lending team that help these two turn their dream into a reality. Let's listen.
How to Buy a Home educates, protects, and connects first-time homebuyers to qualified vetted realtors in their area. Whether you're looking for DIY information or step-by-step guidance, How to Buy a Home is the #1 resource for first-time homebuyers.
Hey, everybody. I'm super excited because we've got another brand new first-time homebuyer in here in Florida. This is Arlenne. And closed on the home on the 23rd of January. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Awesome. So this story is great, and I'm very excited that Arlenne decided to come on. Now, it was you and your husband that bought the place, right?
Yes.
So
Yes,
in November, oh, wait, I forgot to ask you, what's your biggest tip? Give somebody something right away that they can get a learning nugget.
call the lender or a lender right away and start talking numbers because you have no idea where you actually are in your buying capability. And I know you say this on the podcast all the time, but I cannot stress enough how true it is.
Well, that's wonderful. That's a great optimistic start. Know your numbers, and they're probably better than you think. Okay, so I want to talk about the whole home buying process with you because you just did this, and people are going to get excited about that. But I first want to talk about this. You guys bought a $560,000 home in January of 2025. You came to me November 12th of 2025. Sorry, you bought in 2026, obviously.
Yes.
You came to me in 2025, November 12th. Forget the years. Like, you were under contract in 30 or 45 days. And when you came to me, you guys had $3,000 and you bought a $562,000, $500,000 house. Talk to us about the finances. How did this all work?
So, I mean, it wasn't, I had more than what I thought I had. I guess I'll put it that way.
Well, where did you find the money?
Well, so when I signed up and I went on your website to, find a unicorn, I was only looking at my own numbers and just a little bit of a background. I have student debt and other things that I'm trying to, get rid of. So in my mind, I was always kind of thinking like, okay, I can't really spend money for a down payment until I have all these things sorted out because, that's just what I was taught growing up, et cetera, and how you balance things out. So that's in my mind, I'm like, okay, let me start with what I think I can realistically give up without it hurting anything else that I got going on and I'm trying to figure out. So that's why, we started where we started.
Okay.
But yeah, it's and I think I told you at the time, I was like, I think I need your help in convincing my husband that we can do this because part of our discussion
is always next thing on my notes.
Yeah. So it's a balance. And by the way, he's totally in the other room overhearing everything I'm saying right now. But yeah, and it's a balance about, figuring out, I think just for people in general, when you're in a relationship with anybody, right, and you're married, whatever, you kind of have to figure what each other's comfort level is with different things. And, there's going to be different instances of that. For me, I personally had a lot more or I have a lot of debt because of, school and other things, whereas like he didn't. And then thinking about, okay, any decisions that I make, how does that impact him? And then vice versa, so there's kind of an ongoing thing that I'm sure anyone in a relationship can empathize with. But yeah, I was thinking like, okay, if I were to do this and for whatever reason he's not on board, that's how I started, right? Like in my mind. And I'm like, okay, let me see what the real baseline is of like, minimal effort, what can I get or what's realistic, without really rethinking or reworking through, the status quo of how we were living at the time. So that's why. I was able to convince him to get on board. Once we met our unicorn, and I talked to the lender, and I got or rather, I talked to the unicorn, and she gave me some tips, and she gave me a couple of lenders to talk to. Ended up talking with Kelly Court and her team. And so by that conversation, I had convinced my husband, like, hey, I think we both need to be part of this discussion. Like, at least let's hear what they have to say and see what happens. And so we were able to kind of realize, like, between, I had a little bit more savings than 3,000. He had a lot more savings than 3,000. So that helped.
Okay.
But we were able to kind of figure out, like, our finances that way. And, I'm fortunate in that I earn a lot more. So we essentially kind of figured out a plan of, like, okay, if you can put forth the bulk of the down payment or all of it, then I'll take care of the mortgage for the first few years until we kind of, like, get ourselves back to where we were. So that was sort of our plan pushing forward, that we ended up there towards the end of the process. Like, it didn't start there, but we were just like, okay, let's just get out there, see what's out there, see what we can, what we're working with, like, what are the, the monthly payments that we're looking at, what are the interests, all of that. So once we started educating ourselves more on, actually talking to the lender, we talked to Kelly, and then we also spoke with a couple of local lenders that other people had suggested, just to kind of get the lay of the land, if you will. So that was part of, what we ended up doing.
Okay. So once you figured out that system where he was going to do down payment and you were going to do the mortgage, then you guys had a plan. So my question is this: what were the numbers that convinced him? And I mean, did you guys put down a big down payment, or was it low enough that he went, oh, okay?
So our down payment, I think, ended up being around 14 or 15%. So it wasn't quite to 20, because he's much better at saving money than I am. So, we were able to leverage that, but the numbers ultimately ended up being, okay, what's our buying power against, I think one of your earlier podcast episodes, or I remember listening to it, you talked about, like, all the steps you had to do to prepare to figure out, financially where you were, et cetera. And I remember taking notes when I was listening to it, and kind of, like, I already preemptively kind of had that conversation with him, because I was trying to figure out, like, let's get really, really serious about this. And essentially I think we ended up buying a little bit higher than what we thought we were going to, but we found a home that, it just had a lot of work done. So it just, the value proposition of not having to deal with it later on or in the next few years was also something that weighed in, as well. But yeah, ultimately we ended up settling on, like, I want to say it was around 15%. And that included all the closing costs. So it was not quite as high as we thought, because the closing costs were insane. Like, I mean, I know that they are, but, like, it also was like, why is it so much? But so we were able to work with the lender, thankfully. And we basically just kind of worked backwards to figure out, a figure that we were comfortable with. And so that kind of became the deciding factor. But there was a lot of other things with, like, okay, we know we want these specific features, and it wasn't so much about, like, what neighborhood or whatever, but for us, a big part of it was we wanted to both be closer to our jobs, because spending time in a commute is just a drag, and we just didn't want to, that was, like, a big priority for both of us. So we were like, okay, like, if we want to tighten up our purses and do this financial kind of juggling now, we're going to be in a much better place in a couple of years. And then to kind of answer your question earlier too, I had sent him, and I can figure out which one it was. I don't recall off the top of my head, but I sent him one of your episodes, I think from, like, last year or maybe the year before, and to listen to when I first got into listening to the podcast. And the thing that really struck out for him was your argument about how, if you're paying rent right now every single month and you apply that towards, a mortgage, like, you're paying yourself, and over 10 years, you're losing this much money that's going towards nothing, but now you're redirecting it to something else. And so kind of had this like light bulb moment between both of us of like, yeah, that makes total sense. Why wouldn't we do that? And so I think it was just like a combination of different things that just like aligned. And I think because we were kind of getting towards the holidays and people being home a little bit more, we have more time to kind of like sit down and talk about it, which was helpful. So that also kind of, played into the conversation. But I think honestly, that first conversation with Kelly and her team and just kind of going through like, this is where we're at. This is our credit score. This is what we can and cannot do. These are the options. And I honestly, it was eye-opening how much of a better place we were in. And we obviously, fortunately, right, that we were in that we thought we were. I think, yeah, I could ramble about that a lot longer, but
what's interesting to me is, and by the way, the thing you're thinking of, it was hysterical. I think I thought of it 3 years ago and I redo it every year. And I laughed at myself 3 years ago because I've been teaching this for 17 years and I never gave it a name. The rent replacement strategy.
Yes.
That's when you realize that your money can be utilized differently.
Yeah.
And I'm fighting it like crazy right now because people go, my rent's $2,100, a mortgage is $2,800. Why would I lose $700 a month? And I'm like, you're not losing $700 a month. You're using $2,100 a month and then adding a little bit on top of it. But okay, I want to know the student debt. Was that the main thing that you were surprised about? Like you talked to Kelly and you went, I can get approved even though I have all this debt?
It's the student debt. I also have I have some credit card debt that I still like I'm working down from, not a lot, but still some. But I think it was the whole debt to income ratio component of, I just always thought your entire totality of debt got looked at versus what you actually, I've had this conversation. I've said this to like 7 people since. I'm like, did you know that, your debt to income ratio is this? And they only gets looked at. And I've had like the reaction of people in my life that are like, what? Like other people that I know that are also, thinking about starting their own home buying process. But obviously you have to be judicious with that because even though you could be approved for a lot higher, like what can you actually afford, right? At the end of the day, because we all have different, demands on our purses, if you will. But yeah, it just gives you a lot more flexibility than I think initially you thought. And, you can go online and do those little calculators, but at the end of the day, you say this on your show a lot too. It's very generic and it doesn't take into account all of these other nuances that, there's no field for inputting that. There's no personalization. And then there's no, we didn't have to benefit from any specific programs again, because we were in a much better position than I thought. But it was just nice to know that because when I messaged you at the beginning of mid-November, whatever, I had no idea. Like I had no idea. And by the time that we spoke with the lender, it was like the beginning of December. So it was a few weeks before we actually like truly got started. I think we met with the unicorn mid-December. And Tara, who's great, she's amazing. But yeah, we basically told her like, well, we have, a couple of weeks off from the holidays. Can we schedule some, let's start looking, let's just see what's out there. Like, we didn't have an agenda of like, we want to be out. We were also fortunate in that the place we were renting from is owned by my in-laws. So there's no timeline for us. Like we were in a very comfortable position, which I think also probably contributed to not having any kind of rush and trying to do this before. But yeah, we were like, let's just look, let's see what's out there. A lot of people would say like new things come on the market after the New Year's because people want to get through the holiday, whatever, so all that stuff. So, but we saw a couple of houses we really liked. And then when we saw this one that I'm sitting in right now, we both looked at each other. We went, ooh. So, but yeah, it happened much, much faster. I think from the very first day we went to look, actually physically go look at homes to the time that we decided to put in an offer, I think it was 10 days, which is insane.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was really quick.
Well,
we were like, we could keep looking, but if we both like this one, like, let's just start the process, see what happens. I mean, there's no, there's no reason why not.
It's funny. I tell people all the time because lucky for me, there's a lot of solo female buyers. And I tell them, I'm like, look, this is what's going to happen. A realization is going to happen with me. And I'm telling you this because I see this happen with couples all the time. One partner does some research, and then when they share it, and then so together, 10 days seems crazy, but I'm not surprised because you said it. I'm so glad you said you talked to like 7 people. I want to buy a t-shirt that says gross versus debt. Learn your DTI. Or not gross versus net. Gross versus net. Learn your DTI.
Yeah.
So you guys were surprised at what you found, but Arlenne, what you said was so smart. You worked your numbers, but you worked them backwards.
Yep.
Because sounds like you got pre-approved for more than the home that you bought.
Oh yeah.
But
oh yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. Like they were like, oh yeah, you can spend this much. And I'm like, no, I can't. I can't actually afford that on a monthly basis and still like do things I want, But it's just you have to kind of play that game of like, okay, what can I live with, on a month to month that still makes me feel like I have, a cushion if something were to come up or whatever. Or maybe, some people like to do things that cost money, like go to concerts, travel, whatever, like I like traveling. I'm probably not going anywhere for a minute because I feel very poor right now, but that's, that will go away soon, I hope. But yeah, it's an investment. I think it's a good way to redirect. But ultimately you kind of have to sit down and educate yourself on the numbers and, think to yourself, okay, what are some of the adjustments and things? And it wasn't that we were able to do it like right as we were without any adjustments. Like, we talked about, okay, we have $200 a month gym subscription that I'm not really utilizing. Can we freeze that or put it away for now so that's, $1,200 that I'm getting back or whatever much it was. But I don't remember the amount, but I think I just math wrong. But my point is that like, okay, that can go back and that's, something I can use towards this or what have you. So it requires just a little bit of effort to kind of educate yourself on what, what's out there. And I think, honestly, I think your podcast, a lot of what you talk about, for me, the biggest takeaway is actually just financial management, because as a bona fide millennial who did all the wrong things at the beginning of adulthood, right? I feel like I stumbled into a lot of financial planning things when I tried to get my act together a couple of years ago that are basically the same things that you talk about on your show that I wish I had found your show sooner because it would have helped me just for like regular financial planning, regardless of whether you want to buy a home or not. And so, like getting your credit score fixed and all that stuff, like it just goes a long ways to, if you have a good solid credit score, you're just ultimately in a better position to be approved for, all this kind of stuff. So, and again, it's just it's a balance act of what works for you, what works in the market that you're in, what works in your specific situation. And if you have other people, like, if you have a partner or a husband or whoever that you're trying to coordinate with, like you have to make a decision that's balanced and that you can live with, because you're going to be living with it for some time. So yeah, that's kind of what I've learned in this process.
It's so exciting to hear that, because I knew right away, like, okay, you're probably closer than you think you are, because most people are. But when you take that, this is ridiculous.
Like,
November 12th, you were probably under contract, right around Christmas? Were you under contract before or after?
Just after. We made the offer on the 26th. So we were, and they got accepted, like, within the next day. So yeah,
that's awesome.
I think we would have probably closed earlier. Like we were ready to move faster than the seller was. We'll put it that way.
Yep.
So that was pretty cool.
And just think, there you were 5 weeks earlier, not even really knowing where you were at.
Yeah. No, I in Thanksgiving, I decided like that weekend, I'm just like, let me research this like randomly because we've been having a conversation and I got turned on to your podcast from like a Reddit comment in some sort of Reddit subreddit. I don't even remember which one it was. And I mean, I started like, I started getting serious about it at the end of, or I'm sorry, not Thanksgiving. It was like, it was right before November. And then in Thanksgiving is when I really started like, okay, I'm going to make a plan. So yeah.
Yeah.
So it was pretty quick.
Like I said, it was crazy. So you reached out on the 12th. I reached back out to you. Took a couple weeks to kind of get it together. Then Thanksgiving weekend. Yeah. And then in December, it was like 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, it was
Numbers.
like, I'm telling you, like once I had that conversation with the lender and I knew like, this is what you're working with, I was like, oh, I know what I need to do now. Like I just easy peasy, like, and so, yeah. And to be fair, we had conversations before about buying a home for years. Like it wasn't a brand new conversation, but it was always sort of like oh, we need to start thinking about this, or we need to start planning this. But it wasn't actually any like actionable things that we did. It was just less plan to have this discussion soon,
But that's
Yeah.
what I tell people all the time. And it's like you said, the little things you could put in a mortgage calculator, those don't create the actionable steps. It's, but it truly can be, an hour phone call with a realtor and an hour phone call with a lender, and the actionable steps are in. And
Yeah.
bada bing. And, for you, knowing those numbers, working backwards, not paying as much as the bank says you can buy up to here. You guys, you like compacted a whole year's worth of education. And I love the fact that the financial tips, it's great because you learn financial tips that you can continue now moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one thing I would add to that too is one thing that I found a little surprising. When we first talked to the lenders, like both lenders, I think we were expecting to be told this is how much house you can buy. And that's not really what happened. It was more like, how much do you want to spend? And let's work the numbers and work backwards. And I think that's important because it goes back to that mindset of like, what is realistic for you versus technically, yes, I guess I could have tried to purchase a much more expensive home that I probably couldn't, maintain or upkeep, or it would have been, like what people call house poor or whatever. So, but it was kind of an interesting mind shift in thinking of like, okay, it's not, this is my absolute top level, but this is like the comfort zone of where I can still be reasonably happy with what I'm getting and all that. So, yeah.
Incredible lesson right there. That's exactly the way, and it depends on who you're talking to. I mean, I love the Unicorn Nation, and I have let go more than I've actually kept on. And the fact that you were talking with Kelly and Tara, I mean, like Tara, I've known for years, and like she wrote a book a long time ago on how to do this. She like literally has first-time homebuyers as part of what she does.
Yeah.
I can also tell talking to you, like once you saw that and you went, oh my gosh, this is a possibility, you guys got rocking and rolling. How was it looking at homes during the holidays?
It was kind of, we did a couple of like all day marathons kind of thing where we were just like, okay, let's just knock out. So we were trying to like reduce it, but I think we had so many kind of varied things that we were interested in that it was hard to narrow it down, because we didn't have like, this is the neighborhood we want to be in. We didn't have like, this is the style of house necessarily. I will say I'm probably a little bit pickier than the average person because I'm an architect. Like I don't do residential, but I still am kind of nitpicky about, what things look like. So I think that probably either helped or didn't help because I warned Tara at the beginning. I'm like, I'm probably going to be more of a pain in the ass than your average. Because I'm going to walk in, I'm going to like, nope, And so, there was one home that we saw that we both loved. Like it was a renovation. It was in like basically the ideal location for proximity to work and even some family members and a bunch of other stuff. And they generally did a really good job of the renovation, but they were asking for like a ton more money than we think like the comps were in the area. And they, the house next door had just sold like 2 months before for, I think it was like 60 or 70 grand less than what they were asking for. And they were trying to say that, because they did all this work to the house and blah, blah, blah. We never made it to the point of making the offer. We just said like, hey, can you just check with the realtor there and see what's up, I remember this very distinctly because the kitchen, while it was gorgeous, it was beautiful. They did a really fantastic job. And very, when I opened the cabinets, you could tell that they had just like refinished the doors and it was, it was well done, but it was like the paint kind of like stuck a little bit and stuff. Like it wasn't as, and so I'm like, don't sit here and tell me that you're going to try to charge somebody 70 grand more for your little cabinet that doesn't open fully. Like, cause that's the kind of stuff I'm like looking through, like I'm like pulling everything out and like, doing everything. So it was just kind of disappointing. But I think I've heard other people say this on your show too. It's like, it's so important to go see it in person because the photos are like night and day. There was one house that we went to that, like really lovely neighborhood, big lots with big trees and yards and stuff. And the AI these days is insane. Like, because you walk through, I mean, this house was like a complete gut job. And somehow in the photo, it looked light and airy. And like, like we pulled the door open from the front door, and like the knob was like rattling. And so like, you don't see that kind of stuff because it probably hadn't been touched since it was built. And so it was like you have to go see it because it's just, they do a lot to like shush up the images, and you have no idea what it really looks like. It was an interesting process. Like there was, I think, one house we walked into like 5 feet in, and we were like, nope, like turn around and go back in. So, but for the most part, it was like, okay, I see potential. I see what we could do here, or maybe this is great like it is. I didn't realize I would like this until I saw it, that kind of stuff. The other one that was unique was one house I really liked. It was next to a busy road. And one thing we both noticed is like the noise from the road was so much more than you would have realized until you were physically standing there, So that was a deal breaker for my husband, unfortunately. So I didn't get my cool mid-century modern house, but that's okay. I still like the one we ended up with. So yeah.
So many great tips in there. I love that. How old is this home? Because I know you said architect and then you said mid-century modern. So I know what you dig. So when was this one built?
This is not mid-century modern at all, which is funny.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of other nuggets there to share. But This one was built in 1974. It was purchased by a small contractor type about a year-ish ago, and they just like gutted it out and like redid everything. It's so refreshed that we actually were able to work with our insurance broker, and he got the seller, who's a licensed contractor, to sign an affidavit that because enough of the home was renovated, it's being treated as a 2025 home for insurance purposes, which is insane. So we were able to get the quote down like crazy. And that was this guy's suggestion. I had no idea you could do that. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, let's do it, But yeah, it's a 1974 home. It's more like a ranch style that had an addition to. Learned a lot about the insurance process. I'm not sure if we want to get into that too much. Kind of a whole other little mare's nest stuff.
You're in Florida, so the other 49 states don't have what you have. So the rule is, if you're in Florida, the day you meet your realtor, start talking about insurance, then look at homes.
It's crazy. It's crazy. There's some lessons learned there. I think that if I had known that, like, I would love to know more about it. So like another thing was like, when you do the inspections and all the stuff, like you said, for the insurance, there are things that came up that you just don't know to think about. So again, part of the renovation, they redid, I'm not going to get technical, they redid the insulation. And so they used spray foam insulation. So that meant that you couldn't really get in the attic because it's so solid. So the home is beautifully insulated, like the temperature control, magnificent. But then it meant that like we couldn't get the 4-point like exemption for because the inspector physically could not see the attachment of the roof to the house. So it's just like spooky little things like that. And then there's an addition in the back that has a flat roof. So then the insurance was like, oh, well, we don't cover flat roofs. So the insurance that we had before, a week before the closing, said, oh, sorry, we can't cover you. So that was a whole little fun bit what we were trying to find. And, we were able to connect with this other insurance broker that helped us out and stuff. But oh man, I think that was probably my least favorite part of the home buying process, was just dealing with the insurance. It was a whole thing.
Day one, start talking insurance. Mm-hmm. You're going to do all kinds of crazy stuff because you're getting your earnest money deposit in, you're getting your inspection together. In today's current market, because I know that a flat roof means something, but you've got a whole lot of other stuff going on the first couple of days and you might not be thinking about it. So,
well, again, I was really like bothered by that because we do flat roofs in commercial design all the time. And for the insurance guy to tell me like, well, it doesn't get water off as much in the wind. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, that is absolutely not a thing. And, but you have to also remind yourself, like, these people, they have a checklist. They're not thinking about this in a logical way. They're just, this is what my company is telling me I have to say. So,
I could get technical on it and explain it to you. So get ready, everybody, for some real estate nerd dork out. Most of the flat roofs in residential real estate were created before before grading on flat roofs was a thing. Now, this is very prevalent in Southern California. It might be different because it never rains here. So I sell Spanish style houses all the time that they're not
like
graded and drained.
Flat.
Yeah. They're not graded and drained.
Okay.
And
so in design, right, a flat roof is usually not actually flat. It usually has like an 1/8 inch slope. So it does drain. But yeah, that's crazy that you have literal flat roofs. They're actually called slow slope roofs is the actual technical term for it. But yeah, I was like all up in arms with the guy on the phone. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, this one is not in fact flat. I checked.
Yes. You're on the roof with a level. I love it.
I was like, you didn't tell me what a roof looks like. I know what a roof looks like,
Well, you said that was an addition, correct?
Yeah. So, but it was done in the 80s, which is crazy. Like it's this huge room in the back, and we have you couldn't really find any proper documentation of it. So there's that.
Most of the time when you have a flat roof, it means, your traditional home is going to be built an A-frame or something like that. So the reason residential homeowners insurance people are such pains in the butts about flat roofs is because they're always, 95% of the time they're renovations. And sometimes people have their cousin do it and they don't know about slow slope roofs.
No, I get it.
How did the rest of inspection go for you?
The rest of it was fine. There were like a few things that, what I would call a punch list item. So this is like when a contractor does work, there's usually like lingering things. So it was mostly that. I think it was a motivated seller who was, they've been sitting on the house for several months. So obviously because they were an investor type, they wanted to sell, so they were very good about picking up the stuff that we pointed out. And for the most part, it wasn't anything major. The only thing was the inspector just said, hey, I had this happen recently on another house where there's some big trees, some very mature trees in the front. And we recommended that we check the sewage line, and they didn't. And it turned out that the roots of the tree had broken it up. So because it's still the city like owns a utility, but you're responsible for it if it's on your property. This other buyer that they had helped ended up having to pay $12,000 after they bought the house to get this resolved. So thankfully, because the inspector flagged it, we were like, hey, we want you to check this. And, we were able to do it. And sure enough, they found the issue. So they had to fix it before we moved in. So I'm really glad that, we ended up with somebody that had that experience to be able to share that. So that was great.
I'm almost to the point now where I make it mandatory that you do a sewer scope.
Yeah. If you have big trees on your property, for sure, do it. Mm-hmm.
Really glad your inspector recommended that to you.
Yeah.
How was the rest of the closing process for you?
The closing process, I think, was pretty smooth other than the insurance snafu. But it was just more, okay. Like we talked about pushing it out, but because of the sewage stuff, I eventually said, let's just leave it where it is. Cause I want to like really check that this get done. But it was the day of was just sign a bunch of papers and, talk to people. And then we're like, okay, here's the keys. Okay, let's go. All right. So that was pretty good. We moved right away. You can't see it, but behind me, there's still a bunch of boxes. But yeah, we're pretty happy. There's some little projects in the grand scheme of things that we want to do to the house, but nothing major, like I said, because it was sufficiently redone that there wasn't a heck of a lot to do. So that was a plus for us. We didn't want to deal with that. So
the fact that you guys started and understood where the numbers changed for you, a lot of times I like to explain to buyers, this is going to help you with the mindset of the home because, here you are coming in with an architect's mindset, and then suddenly this one had too many check boxes to pass up. And, plus it's 74, so you probably have a really good layout. And those older homes, they built them much more spaciously.
Yeah, and they did some, like I said, that there's that addition that created more square footage, but then they also kind of redid some of the parts of it, like the office that I'm sitting in right now. I think this must have been the dining room originally because of where it is in the house. Like it just doesn't make sense. But they expanded the kitchen and other areas enough that there's another dining area in the house. So it's pretty good on the whole.
How does your dog like the new home?
I mean, reality is we got the house because we wanted a yard for the dog. Let's be real. But, that was
Yeah.
our big project that we're trying to do is get a fence for the yard so that they can run around very freely out there. But that was, we got this puppy last year. She just turned 1 this week and she is a lot. So I think she needs the space to run around. And I think that helped precipitate the decision making, I think.
Yeah.
If I'm honest.
Well, you have given us so many things. So we were chatting a little bit there off camera for a second. So tell us what was the talking about the financial side and understanding what you can do versus what we've been told for so many years.
Yeah, I think the debt to income ratio, I think for me was like the biggest aha moment of like, wow, I did not realize that I technically could have more buying power than I thought I did. I think also another little nugget was knowing that you can borrow against your 401k if you have that situation. It ended up not being very useful for me because I work for an ESOP company and it turns out those are different rules, but it was good to know that was an option. So yeah, it was just kind of something that again, I the debt to income ratio and that I've talked to a few other people about who have talked about like, oh, I have a lot I need to figure out and all this stuff. And I said, okay, well, start here and do that. And just having a conversation about what it is that you can and cannot afford and just having a general plan and understanding. Because I think communication is really important if you're going with somebody else, like in my case, and making sure you're both comfortable with the decision. Getting very educated about it is really important. And I think just having the conversation with the professionals that can help you with pointing you and resources in the right direction is also really, really critical. Read online all you want, but at the end of the day, until you kind of go through it and talk to people about it, there's only so many subreddits that you can go through and so many podcast episodes that you can go through. So you just kind of have to get yourself out there and figure it out and talk to people about it, because there could be people in your life who went through something similar recently and you just don't know the nuances, or you want to, you don't want to pry too much, but pry, they might say, no, who cares,
And the individuality of each individual buyer, that's what's so important to understand, is that you can get great tips from other people and you can, like you said, you can go online, but eventually it's that conversation with a professional. And the more that you have trust in that professional, a bad professional is going to show you a few things. A great professional is going to open your eyes and suddenly 5 weeks later, you're under contract. Yeah.
And my first conversation on the phone with our unicorn, right? Like I put her in my phone as Tara the unicorn. So I have her in my cell phone. But I thought, okay, I got this contact from your podcast and How to Buy a Home. And I thought, okay, but if I'm doing my due diligence, I should talk to other people too. And so I requested from family and friends, like, hey, give me some contact information for realtors that you've used, like people who bought a home recently, et cetera. And everyone's like, oh yeah, my person was great. They did such a great job and blah, 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 blah. And, I had a conversation with Tara on the phone. We were both in our cars going somewhere and it was just the way that it aligned. But within that first 30 minutes, she just gave me this plethora of tips. And a lot of it was stuff that, I had already heard from you on the podcast, but unsolicited. She was, went into all these things like, hey, you need to think about this, think about that, blah, 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 blah. And she just started rallying things out. And at this point, there's no agreement of any kind between us. Right. And I think that's important because all the other people I talked to either didn't even think about offering that information, or if I prompted them, it was very piecemeally, let me give you one or two things, maybe, oh yeah, when we get our agreement, I'll talk to you about that, which again is fine. They do business that way, no big deal. But I think ultimately, and reinforce why Tara was a better choice for us, because I was like, well, if this person is willing to help me through the process, so, did I say selfishly, because ultimately at the end of the day, she's also doing business, but I appreciated the genuineness of her saying, okay, I understand that you're new to this process and you probably have a lot of questions. Let me give you a lot of information so that you can make an informed decision. Versus, another agent that I talked to was just like, well, once we get, in their agreement with each other, then we'll talk more. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, I don't know that I want to talk to you more.
Do you not understand?
I already got this info from somebody else,
Do you not understand that I'm interviewing you?
Yeah, So that's fine. And then in the same thing with the lenders, right? It was the same thing. I only talked to 2 different lenders, but it was night and day. It was like, hey, let me give you all this information because I understand you're new to the process. So these are the things you need to be aware of. And that was, Kelly and her team. And she was fantastic. Like I had a really great experience also working with them. Like I could not recommend them enough. But yeah, it's the same thing. I talked to somebody local that a family member put me in touch with. And again, they were fine, but it was more of like, oh, well, when we get there, we'll give you more information. Like, no, give me the information now. How can I make an informed decision if I don't know all the information right now? And so it was just sort of very high level and not detailed enough. And I'm not like that, as you might imagine. We had like a multi-spread spreadsheet for this that we created. And so like, that's just not the person I am. And so know your audience, I guess, too.
Yeah. Yeah. We just, I love it. This year I'm having so much fun. We just posted an interview with a guy whose friends call him the freak in the sheets. And I love working with the spreadsheet people because, it's such a testament to, there's a reason why I'm giving all this information away for free. And because go for it, go out and talk to some other people. But when you talk to a unicorn, I truly, this is a matchmaking service of 300 out of 3 million. And you will notice a difference. And the reason is because I want to hear people like you when they buy a home. What I really like is all realtors to become unicorns so I don't have to do podcasts all the time to explain to people. But you know what? We change the world one home at a time. And in this case, we change the world just for the dogs because that's what's important, right?
Just for the dogs. That's the important part here. Just one of the dogs. So the other one's fine, sitting on a couch.
Okay, yeah, just the puppy now, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I think that you nailed it. It's like it's truly valuable for people to just understand. Like you can't make a decision unless you go out and inform yourself, and you also have to do the homework of finding the right people to give you that information, and that will pay dividends sooner rather than later.
Well, see, the DTI and the gross versus net, for someone that's a spreadsheet, like you go in and change the formula once you figure out how it really works. And that spreadsheet must have like glowed like, whoa, I don't have to look at the gross numbers anymore.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I'm not even like a crazy spreadsheet person. Like I'm not the most whatever, but I like lists because I like to see things next to each other. So it's just like, okay, this is locations. This is, things I need to worry about. These are like potential future things I need to budget for. These are like, our wants and needs list, etc. All of that stuff. So I think I actually didn't touch on this, but having that conversation with my husband was also really useful to like just going through, okay, like what is a deal breaker for you versus what is one for me? And ironically, in our case, we actually, all of the things that we said we absolutely must have day one, I think we got like 2 of them. And then we went for a bunch of other stuff. But we saw the potential of being able to add those things later. And so there was like a trade-off there, right? And so, but it's just where we ended up. And we're happy. I think we made the right choice. And I'm glad it worked out well, smoother than we thought it would.
It does take crushing the HGTV dreams. It's a lot easier when you've run the numbers ahead of time and when you believe and understand the rent replacement strategy and the wealth that you're growing. Then you're not quite as set on, and you said you were picky, but you were picky once you understood the rent replacement strategy and that this was going to be something building for you.
Yeah.
And, save up. We'll get you that mid-century modern classic, 8 years from now, when you make a mint on this home. So.
Well, the very first house we went to see was kind of that vibe. Like it was a mid-century modern type, but we went, like we were so enamored of it. And we were like, man, I think we need to make an offer. Let's do this. By the next day, we had talked ourselves out of it because we're like, well, it's much further away than we wanted to be. The yard is really nice, but if you enclose the yard, it loses the charm because it had a trail right behind it. And then we started like just nitpicking all the little things about it. So then we just, so it's just weird when you think you go into it wanting something and then you see it and then you're like, no, this is not what I actually want,
And it's a process. And I tell people all the time, the best lists for buying a home are the ones that have all kinds of stuff crossed out, circled, and then written underneath. Like, oh my God, I didn't even think about this. That's the way it goes. And, I'm glad that you guys ended up there. And I really appreciate you spending the time today because there were some great tips in there. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate having you.
Yeah. Thank you for having this podcast and empowering me to do this.
Rock on. I love it. Thanks.
You. Take care. Bye.
Doing these interviews is one of my favorite part of this podcast. Thanks so much to Arlenne. And, we've got over 100 of these stories. You can check them out in the episode guide. Real stories from real people, getting it straight from the homeowner's mouth. And the education here, it's legit. It's making this happen. And we're here to bring that home buying power back to the renters, even though you feel like right now, it might not be something that you can pull off. You can do it, and you can hear stories of other people that did. We'll put that link to the episode guide in the show notes. If you're brand new to the show, that's where you can also find a link to episode 400. That's the very first 10 steps that every first-time home buyer should take to get started so you can set yourself up for maximum success. And hey, if you're out on social media, check us out on Instagram and YouTube, also on the TikTok as well. And if you're learning anything here from this podcast, I've been asking people, help us out, write a quick review on Apple or Spotify. You have no idea how much that helps us. And please, 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 if you've gotten anything out of me telling all this stuff to you for free, leave us a review so other people can find it. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep talking to the microphone and bringing education. And when you're ready to have your own story happen, go to howtobuyahome.com, click that link, get yourself a unicorn. And at the very least, you can get a plan started because you can do this.
Looking for more DIY education or your own personal step-by-step guidance through the home buying journey? Since 2019, How to Buy a Home has been the #1 resource for first-time home buyers. So visit howtobuyahome.com to get started.